All right. Can I, well, first off, as Mr. Daniel said, we're kicking off wisdom literature finally with the book of Job. And we are doing the first 14 chapters today, titled Faith Under Fire. Can I get a volunteer to pray for our group discussion today? Hannah? Thank you.
All right. Dear Lord, thank you that we were able to come here today and to learn more about you and what you have to say in your word. And I pray that we pay attention and you give Miss Ann some peace and grace and wisdom and guidance with teaching. In Jesus' love we pray.
Amen. Very cool. So just giving you a little drive-by of the book of Job. Today we're talking about faith under fire, introducing the book, and the characters that we'll be talking about in most of this book, and the back and forth that goes between Job and his friends and God and all the people. Then we'll read next week about the struggle for justice and how Job and his friends try to reason their way through God being just. And then Job's final case where he just cries out to God again and again. And then we see a renewed, fresh perspective at the end of the book after we go through the gnarly bits. All right, so I'm going to ask, how did the reading go for everyone? I would like a thumb up if you read anything of Job. Yeah. Okay, I would like a thumb up if you took notes on any part that you read. Notes on any part, because I didn't see who did what. Okay, how many of you read all 14 chapters? All right, I see some new thumbs. I'm happy. Did we take notes on all 14 chapters? Okay, that gives me a good guidance on where to go. Okay, so we're going to kind of structure our summary and all that kind of stuff a little differently. We've got a little bit more like directed questions because wisdom literature is kind of it's a new genre for all of us to be studying. So we're going to begin with the context and the flow. So I would like someone to summarize where we are in the book, who is speaking, what are the thoughts and the theme progression. So let's start with the first, I think it's 2 chapters I want someone to do. Let me check. Yeah, who can take the first 2 chapters using those 3 phrases as a guide? Benjamin?
Okay, so by where are we in the book? Are you thinking like the start of the book is your answer, or what's your, okay?
Yep.
So yeah.
It's pretty easy this week.
Yeah.
We're at the beginning.
At the very beginning of the book. And then the main people we have speaking, the people who do the most are Job, Satan, and God. So a good chunk of both of these chapters, and his 3 friends. But a good chunk of these chapters is like Satan's like, hey, I bet that Job's gonna kind of crumble if you take away all of his stuff. And God's like, okay, bet. And then he doesn't. After he takes all his stuff, he's like, okay, I bet if I go after his health. And God's like, okay, bet, do that. Just don't kill him. And so that's the main thoughts, and then we get introduced to his 3 friends that give different answers to why he's suffering.
Very good. Yeah, I would say even to point out, Satan doesn't exactly ask God for it. God offers Job up to get this punishment.
Why?
Do we know why? That might be something God does.
To test our faith.
Yeah, test the faith to show his power within us. To show Satan who's boss. Yeah, very good. Okay, moving along, I would like someone to give me kind of the flow of chapter 3. So who's talking? We just wrapped up that, God and Satan discussed Job, and Satan went and was given basically free range to hurt or do anything to Job except take his life. And so Satan first took all of the things he had, his entire family minus his wife. He had nothing. Everything was taken and destroyed from him, yet he did not charge God with wrong or sin, right? That's what our verse talked about today. And then, as Benjamin said, Satan attacks Job's health by saying, oh, if I make it just miserable to live, then he'll curse God and walk away and all this kind of stuff. And did he? Nope. No. All right. So that's kind of the shape of where we're kicking off here now with chapter 3. I'm going to encourage those of you who only read the first half of the chapters to start typing in. Or I might call on you. I want someone other than Benjamin first. Shannon, what does chapter 3 tell us?
He pretty much just says that he wants to die. And
Deal.
yeah, because he's done. Like, I don't want to suffer anymore.
What's the key thing he's lamenting about?
His birth.
Let Shannon answer.
Oh, yeah, he wishes he wasn't born.
Yeah. That's how much he does not want to be on this earth. He's like, why was I born? What was the point of this? Yeah. Exactly. Did he curse God in that chapter?
No.
Very good. All right. Chapter 4 and 5. We are introduced to one of the other characters who actually gets a speaking role now. Who would like to do chapters 4 and 5? A new person. Katie?
I'm probably gonna say it wrong, but Eliphaz?
Correct.
Okay.
Good job.
Well, that guy, he basically tells Job that, like, you technically haven't done anything wrong, this kind of just happens to you, so it's just like, God will just make you great again. Yeah.
I made a note. He calls Job to remember, like, when others were weak, what did you do to help them? So do that for yourself now, kind of thing. Yeah, what about chapter 5? Does that kind of continue there?
Yeah, for the most part.
Anyone else want to add to chapters 4 and 5? Anything else to add to that summary? Because we know we have Eliphaz speaking, and he's responding to Job, who just said, oh, what's the point of that I was born? I don't wish I was. That was good English. And then Eliphaz responds, giving him comfort and advice. Is that what he does?
Well, he's really heavily implying, like, the heading is the innocent prosper, and so he's, like, pretty heavily implying that Job must have done something, like sinned.
He's implying that Job did something wrong to deserve this.
If he was innocent, why is this bad thing happening? He must have done something.
Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts? About chapters 4 and 5? Seth and Bree, you guys need Bibles, or are you good? I'm good. You good? Okay. So, we've talked a lot about chapter 4. Chapter 5, again, it continues Eliphaz, but he even says, like, kind of like Lucy said, fools or stupid people gain nothing, right? If you keep doing the wrong or the things, like, that's why you're punished, obviously. And then he does say at the end of chapter 5 and verse 8, as for me, I would seek God, and to God I would commit my cause. And then kind of describes who God is, some of the character of God, that he is great, he does marvelous things, he sends rain and waters on the fields, he frustrates those who are crafty and wicked so that they aren't successful, he saves the needy, those guys. So he does describe a bit of who God is, and like, this is who God, helps. And he's clearly not helping you, so he's implying Job did something, right? Yeah. Okay. Moving right along, because we've got 2 more points to talk about with this, so we're doing kind of a drive-by summary here. What is Job's response in 6 and 7? How does Job respond to Eliphaz? Hannah?
So he says stuff about just, like, is it where if who's just, if God's just in a way, or is it that later on?
Do you have a verse reference written down?
No, I forgot my notes at home.
I don't think this is the part you're thinking.
Oh, okay. Then,
I think that's a little later. Do you have anything else? That thing with the Shannon I started? Yeah? What do you got?
He's kind of like mad at him and said like he didn't bring me any comfort or anything. And he's like, I haven't done anything wrong, you know? Like I followed God, like, yeah. And then in 7, he just feels hopeless again, and he says he wants to die. And then he talks about like his physical pain, like with all the,
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything to add to those chapters? 6 and 7? Thank you for being mature about 6 and 7 today.
Quietly.
Quietly. I'll take quietly over obnoxious. All right. In chapter 6, you're right. Yeah, he goes to his friend. He's like, well, that wasn't helpful. That wasn't very nice of you, kind of thing. But he still just says that his grief and despair is justifiable. What does that mean?
He has good reason to be.
Yeah, he's like, my reasons are legit for feeling this way.
I have nothing and I'm very sick. Like,
Of course I'm unhappy and struggling and questioning and angry, right? But he also begs to understand, like, he also still does take a little bit of Eliphaz's, like, narrative of, you did something wrong, clearly, because you have all these problems. So he does question, like, okay, I'm struggling, so what did I do? Did I do something wrong that I don't know? Like, make me understand this. 6:24 says, teach me and I will be silent. Make me understand how I have gone astray. 25 says, how forceful are upright words, but what does reproof from you reprove? So he's saying, teach me what I did wrong so I don't do it again, because I don't want to do this again. And then, as you said, in chapter 7, it just clearly underlines, he doesn't get it, he feels hopeless, what's the point of life again? Yeah, good job, guys. All right. Then Job finishes his his second hopeless speech, and who then responds in chapter 8? Or who gives their next bit? Bildad? Who wants to tell me what Bildad tells Job?
I can try something like that.
Okay.
So pretty much he says, you should go to God and repent for what you've done. Just assume that Job has done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And say that God would forgive you and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm. And then he also says, on the flip side of Job, you did something wrong, fix it, maybe God will give you mercy. He also talks about somebody else that might need that.
Yeah.
Who? This is open to anybody.
blameless man? A blameless man?
Okay. Look at verse 4.
Children.
What was that, Hannah?
Children.
Yeah. So he says also, like, if you didn't do it, then maybe your children did, and that's why they deserved to die and to be taken away. Ouch. All right. And then at the end, did anyone notice some of those 6 things that we talked about, the personification or anything like that, at the end of chapter 8? I'm jumping ahead a little, but that's okay. What does he talk about the blameless man at the end? What does Bildad say about the blameless man?
God won't reject him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he adds on to that with the he will fill your mouth with laughter. He builds off of what he just said.
Yeah, so he doesn't reject the blameless man. He'll restore your joy and your laughter and your play. Yeah, exactly. All right. Then Job answers Bildad in chapters 9 and 10. What is Job's answer? Or I guess his continuation of this dialogue. I haven't heard from Shiloh yet. You said you read all the way to 14?
Yeah.
Yeah? Why don't you tell me, what does Job say in 9 and 10? What's kind of his response to Bildad continuing this conversation?
I'm trying to think how to word this, because I did like, the way I read it, I did 8, 9, 10, 12.
Okay.
Like,
So 8, we know that chapter 8 is Bildad talking. So find in your notes where you switch to how Job is answering or talking.
wait, to Bildad?
Well, he's responding to what Bildad said in chapter 8. So chapters 9 and 10 are Job speaking now, and he is building off of what Bildad said in chapter 8.
I don't know, man. I don't have. Someone help me. I don't know what to say.
What does Job in the first, honestly, basically, really all of chapter 9, but looking at the beginning of chapter 9, who is Job talking about?
God?
And what is he talking about, God? What is he saying?
That like. Can't hold my words. That like we all been there.
Is he describing God, or is he asking God questions? Is he...
Like he like agreed that like God is pretty cool.
Okay.
He's awesome. Wise.
Yeah, so he's agreeing in a sense with Bildad that, God is just, God is good. That Bildad made some good, said truthful things about God. And then it transitions, still kind of talking about God, but what does Job also acknowledge?
About how can a man like him acknowledge God or go before him?
Yeah, he's asking the question, how can man be right before God?
Everyone who laid the foundations of the world.
Yeah. Right? That's a question I read that and went, I've asked that question. How can I be right before God? You can't, right? So, is that a rhetorical question?
Yes.
Yes, because it's an obvious answer if you know anything about God, right? But it also makes us think, can man be right before God? All right. Anything else about we talked pretty decently about chapter 9, where Job acknowledges some of the truths that Bildad said, but then he also talks about man's inability to be like God or to meet the standards that God has for eternity, and acknowledges that humans are limited and God is eternal. All right, but what is chapter 10 in his transition? I loathe my life. I will give free utterance to my complaint. I will speak in bitterness of my soul. I will say to God, do not condemn me. Let me know why you contend against me. So what is he talking about in chapter 10?
Is it like, why are all these bad things happening to me?
Yep.
Kind of asking, why did you let me be born if I was just going to suffer like this?
Yeah, he's asking God why. Yeah. He has a lot of rhetorical questions in chapter 10 of asking, well, don't you know who I am? Didn't you make me out of the flesh? Didn't you...
Pour me out like milk and curdle me like cheese?
Yeah. Yep. You clothed me with skin and flesh and knit me together with bones. You've granted me life and you cared to preserve my spirit. Yet, I don't understand the purpose of the suffering. Why do I have it? Why do I have this sin? Yeah. I wrote in my notes, Job is very relatable in these 2 chapters.
Yes.
How many of you have questioned God like that? I say if no one's hand is up, then you're wrong. Because we all have. Yeah. All right. Then we're introduced to the 3rd friend in chapter 11. Who can tell me about this 3rd friend and what he tells Job? Lucy.
3rd friend is Zophar.
Mm-hmm.
He talks to Job. What?
You got this, Lucy.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll give you a minute to find your things.
Implying that Job must have done something. Can you find out the deep things of God? Like, kind of, after Job asks those questions, he's kind of like, how can you know? Why are you asking that stuff?
Yeah.
Maybe not getting, it's a rhetorical question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's telling Job that, God does great things that we can't comprehend, so why are you even trying to?
Mm-hmm.
He also kind of points out one other thing pretty big in this chapter. Open to the floor.
He says that he deserves worse. Like, if you've done one thing wrong, then you deserve much worse than you're getting right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Because what's the punishment of death? Or sin.
Oh, no.
Death. Coffee hasn't kicked in apparently. Yeah. So he's saying you sinned, you did something wrong against God. You deserve so much worse than what you've got. Yet we have seen how bad it is for Job. And his friend is saying, you deserve it worse. How would you feel if your friend said, yeah.
I would feel really bad, but I would know that it's true.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't blame them. I would blame myself.
Yeah.
You just
Right, but also,
he died.
Yes, Benjamin?
I mean, I don't know if I have the full context, but he's not completely right, though. Job never really did anything wrong. It's God's final judgment.
Mm-hmm.
But from his perspective, he was wrong. He didn't know what God's thought process was, so it was pretty useless advice.
I know, Daniel and I were talking about this a lot. He's like, if you read what his friends each say, they're technically right and speaking truth, but their context is wrong because they're assuming that Job has sinned. They're assuming a lot of things and they're assuming that they're true, and so therefore they're providing advice based on that assumption that we know is wrong. So they're speaking truth, but not in the correct context. Therefore, for Job, it's not the right thing. Does that make sense?
They're assuming that he did something wrong, and then giving their advice based off that, rather than general and being like it's all in God's plan and He's doing this for some reason.
Right. Yep. They're trying to use that logic and that reasoning of, obviously you're a human, so you sinned and did something wrong, otherwise why would God do this? Because they're also assuming about God that He is just and that He will always punish sin and He will always judge it. True. God is the final judge. He's the final one that judges us, as Benjamin said. But in this exact instance, we know that that's not the accurate story and context of what Job is going through right now. So that's why he's responding a lot of time like, yeah, but that wasn't helpful. Right? Yeah, very good. All right, and then after Zophar, he concludes, basically, I read chapter 11, and I was like, this very much feels like Zophar's telling Job, do better.
Yeah.
Or what? It's hard. Come on, just suck it up and fix it, It's really how it felt.
And Job's
He's like,
fix it.
Exactly, right? He's like, if I knew what I did, I'd fix it, kind of feeling,
If I could fix it, I would fix it, but I can't.
But I can't. Yeah. All right. So then in our last 3 chapters, in 12, 13, and 14, Job answers Zophar specifically, but then continues to kind of also transition in talking sort of like to God, or at least like his perspective changes to talking more to God rather than just to his friends. So who can tell me his reply? That's in chapter 12. But that's where he's specifically more responding to what Zophar says. Who can give me some of that, Lucy?
Job says, basically he's just telling him, no one but the Lord could have done this. No one else controls like judgment and stuff.
Yeah.
First to go along with that, I don't know. Your father was the man. If he tears down, none can rebuild. If he shuts a man in, no one can open.
Yeah, he's talking about God's authority. So he's agreeing with Zophar of like, I think at the beginning, verse 3, but I have understanding as well as you. I'm not inferior to you.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not a fool. I know who God is, And then continues to like spit out more truth about God, and basically is saying what they said. But again, he's frustrated and angry at his friends who are not accurately understanding his struggle right now, right? All right. So then after he responds that way and talking a lot about God, what does he continue or kind of shift into talking about in chapter 13? Does Leah have any thoughts back there?
I didn't read any of it.
Okay.
Isn't it kind of like he tries to shift from talking about God to more talking towards God, like even though he's going through all of this, he'll still trust him, or in a way.
Yeah, he gets there. He's definitely angry. He's angry at his friends who aren't like, he feels like they're speaking against him and God because they're not getting it, right? And so he does kind of pivot to like, okay, but like, hear my argument in verse 6. Listen to my pleading lips. And so at first he's kind of talking to his friends like, will you speak falsely of God? Will you like lie to me? Which technically, are they lying to him about God? No. Again, we talk about the context, but like it's not helpful right now. So at first he's very angry at his friends, but then does transition to talking more to God, and again declaring his innocence and demanding that God explain himself. Right? Do we see that in chapters 13 and honestly 14 a little bit? Did we gather that when we read it? Yeah. All right, Lucy, can you sum up the last chapter?
Yeah, yes.
Or Katie? I think you were the two that I know read all the way. Or Shiloh? Was it the person I saw? Okay.
So in 14, Job pretty much just summarizes like he's so we're lamenting again. He's like, woe is me. And turn my page. He's saying like death eventually comes to all, like no matter like if you've done good or bad in life, like, you're gonna die. And he said like he uses a metaphor of like there's hope for a tree, then a man, if it's cut down, then it will sprout again, and its shoots will not cease. But if a man dies, he's done. The end.
Yeah.
Like
So we kind of end on a downer, right? He's like, we all die eventually. What's the point?
Yeah.
Why do I have to suffer this much if I'm just going to die anyways?
yes.
Yeah. Not a very pleasant ending for this week's reading. Did anyone else have any other thoughts?
Well, I think it's interesting in the context of that, for us, when we live, we have a very plain goal of sharing the gospel, and like we have a very important purpose with this. And back then, obviously they had God to worship and God was there for them, but it wasn't necessarily plainly written, this is your mission to accomplish in your life. And so maybe he kind of felt like it was pointless because he didn't have a mission.
Yeah, that's very possible. Because, we don't know when this story happens. There are some potential context clues, but again, I think that's the point. We're not supposed to know when in it, and anything that people say is not proven true and accurate like some of the other books. We don't know when it happened. It could have happened before, like in Genesis. It could have been one of the very first things that was ever written down. That is one possibility. But it could also have happened later, because we don't know the author. We don't know a lot of these things. So we don't know, like, did he have the law? Or did he just, like, know God and exist with God like Abraham did? We don't know. So we don't know, like you said, we don't know how much he had. But yeah, it might have not been as clear to him. But we do know that he was a blameless man of God that did not sin, that did not do anything wrong. We know that context, regardless of how much of the scripture he had. So it is interesting to note that. All right, before we do our discussion here, I have one more question to kind of wrap this all up. But before that, do you guys have any additional verses or imagery? I know we talked a little bit of some of the like rhetorical questions. I felt like there were a lot of those. The last kind of bit that Lucy shared in 14, he compared and contrasted man to a tree. You know, is there anything else that you guys noticed in these chapters that you didn't get a chance to share in regard to specific verses or the 6 elements that we talked about in the poetry?
I kept forgetting to watch for these while I was reading, so.
Yeah. You'll find that it kind of starts to like repeat, like you, as we said, there's a lot of rhetorical questions where like Job is asking his friends, like, are you gonna really challenge God this way? Are you gonna really do this or that or this? Or he's questioning God of like, why? You know, but he has all these different things like, well, if you're this way, God, then why is this happening? If I was this way, then why is this happening? And he's asking a lot of those questions. I think that's kind of the overall theme of Job, is a lot of questions, a lot of overarching things like that. But there was some personification, there was some hyperbole, right? What's hyperbole?
Over-exaggeration.
Yes. Do we think any of them over-exaggerated a little bit in general? Yeah.
Yeah, for example, what Job did.
Yeah, they exaggerated a lie that he did something wrong. Yeah. Amazing how it can blow out of proportion real quick.
It's like they just stuck him in a corner and just started accusing him.
Yeah. All right. So we'll wrap up here in the next, 10 minutes. But with this final question that is not really rhetorical, because I want you guys to actually share your thoughts on this, but I want you to also take this question into your week. When Job questions God, is that a lack of faith or a form of faith?
I would say it's a form of faith because God tells us to ask him questions. Because God's not like, oh, if you're wondering or you're not sure about this, that means that you don't believe in me. Like, that's not what God says. God says that if you want to, know something, knock and the door will be open to you. Ask me that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, Jesus said, ask and you will receive, seek and you will find.
Well, and it shows also, if you ask questions, that means that you care about what you're trying to do. So if you ask, God, how do I follow you? You care enough that you want to know the right way to follow him. If you're having to ask him those questions, then it shows that you're like, okay, I understand I understand that you're here. I need to know how to do this.
Yeah.
And then also, to me, it could be both, because when we were talking about the judges, there's this one judge, I forgot his name, but when God told him that he was to be the next judge, he was like, I don't really believe that, so he left out wet cotton or something like that. And
Gideon.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fleece. Where he's like, if you really are saying what you're saying, Lord, then prove to me by doing this. Yeah. That is a good point. But did God still answer him?
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, not the best example to follow. That's a good point, Leah. Thank you for sharing that. But in Job's context, was it faith or was it a lack of faith? A lack of faith. How many of you related to some of his questioning? Have you ever been like, God, why does this part of my life suck right now? Why do I keep falling back into this bad habit that I know is wrong and I need to fix it and I know I should fix it, but then I keep going back to it? Have you ever asked that question?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So in your life, are you asking God questions on a daily basis? And then are you seeking the answers? All right. Any last thoughts? Okay. Jesus, we come before you. Feeling a little heavy with reading the book of Job and seeing the suffering and the anguish that a man who was right in your eyes and blameless had to go through so much pain and suffering, even though he technically didn't do anything wrong that we know of, and he still had to suffer. Lord, our lives often feel that way, and it sucks. And we get mad, and we get frustrated, and it hurts. And yet you are still there. You remain the same. Your steadfast love never ceases. Your mercy and your faithfulness are new every day. You don't give up on us when we give up on you, and thank you for that. Thank you for being God, the Almighty, King and ruler of this world and of eternity that we get to be with. Lord, renew my heart to be as excited as my 5-year-old student on Friday who said, "Are you saved? Great, we get to go dance in heaven together." And Lord, renew that spirit in all of us. We're all church kids that have grown up hearing your word. And it brings life, it brings joy, it brings patience and peace and kindness and goodness and all these things. Lord, renew our faith. Strengthen us in these times so that we continue to come back to you and then to proclaim your word to the nations. Go before us as we go into service. Go before the praise team and Pastor Grady, and just make your name known. May we glorify you in worship together, and just may they know we are Christians because of our love and our joy. That doesn't make sense sometimes with how our lives are going. We love you, Lord, and it's your name we lift all this up. Amen.